Welcome back to Proxy, everybody, and today we are going to be talking once again about aspect host. So I've been wanting to do a video, kind of a recap of my aspect host list for 2000 points for a couple months now, and it was ironic because I was expecting really heavy nerfs to this type of army in the last balanced data slate, even though truthfully I don't think the Aeldari deserve a nerf like what people are saying. But it ended up being that GW was pretty fair with the Eldari, I felt, and they just nerfed 10-man squads of Swooping Hawks because those were being kind of abused for their mortal wounds and so forth. So we're at a pretty good level. They nerfed Corsairs by 5 points, which also was, I think, fair considering they were being heavily used. And so now, basically, I have been running this list for 4-5 months now. Pretty long time. I've made some changes to it over the course of that time, but for the most part, it's been very minimal. So basically, let's go ahead and take a look at this list, and I'll kind of explain how the list works, why it was designed, with what purpose in mind, and how it performs on the battlefield. So, starting off in our epic heroes, we do have 3 Phoenix Lords, which, I think it's ironic because a lot of people are just kind of saying, that the Aeldari are kind of like, Phoenix Lord dependent. And I agree, but I also think that other armies, if you look at other competitive lists, like Black Templars and Ultramarines and stuff, they're running a lot of special characters as well. So I think really the game right now is just very special character heavy, epic hero heavy, and it's not necessarily just the Aeldari. So we have Fuegan. He's our warlord. Now, honestly, I put him as the warlord just because sometimes, very occasionally, I will play somebody in the game shop who is more casual and they will want to play with a twist card. So there's a couple of twist cards that actually really benefit Fuegan, so because he has the revivability, right? So that's why I put him as the warlord. Jane Czar is also in the list. She's big time helpful with pretty much any kind of, mission that requires you to kill a unit on an objective. Sometimes her unit doesn't trade for points, but they always score, right? I always make sure that Jane Czar and her, Banshee score points for me. And that's the big thing with Jane Czar, right? She's a really good heroic intervention unit, but if there's a storm hostile objective and, there's really no way for Corsairs to get the job done, then Jane Czar has to go and get the job done. We have Lycus, which just unlocks so many kind of options for the Aeldari. She's so fast. She has, the ability to allow you to crit on 5s with sustained hits on fire dragons, stuff like that. So she's really, really good. I also have a large amount of Swooping Hawks in this list, and Swooping Hawks love Lycus if they can draw a beat on something tough in the midfield and just be like kind of 24 inches away. They usually do very well with her. She also can charge a unit after, warping in with the warp spiders. So that's always nice as well. Lycus is just a very, very strong character. We have an Autarch wayleaper in the list. So this Autarch wayleaper specifically has the strategic savant enhancement. And over the 5 months of playing this, I think it's the enhancement itself has been useful 3 or 4 times. However, those 3 or 4 times, it did just score me. It was a 10-point swing. It gave me 5 points for a secondary, controlling an objective without having to kill the entire unit, and it denied my opponent a primary, right? So, for example, extend enemy battle lines, right? And extend is always good with strategic savant because you can tow the objective with the warp jump, with the flicker jump, and then you can of course shoot the enemy unit and kill most of their models with the Autarch wayleaper and the warp spiders, and then they don't usually have enough OC to contest it, so you get the objective from your opponent for extend, and you're also able to deny them their primary point pretty easily. So I have enjoyed the Autarch wayleaper, especially on boards that are not so terrain dense to where you can you have more free reign to just come onto the objective without having a wall in the way or something like that to block you. A lot of times on more terrain dense boards, WTC or UKTC kind of board layouts, I feel like the objective is sometimes in a place where your opponent can kind of deny you the ability to shoot and steal in the same activation with this unit. So GW train layouts or just like custom layouts at your local game shop, I think this is a really good investment. He's done pretty well for me. The only times, or I should say she, because I built it with, the booba armor. But anyway, she's done a good amount for me in my games. However, I think the enhancement itself has really only helped me a couple times. Nevertheless, I still think it's worth it. And I'm going to continue running it while I'm in a meta that is very dominated by big stuff. So I do get a lot of tanks in my meta. I do get a lot of monsters in my meta. And the other stuff is usually like horde, right? I'm not really seeing a whole lot of like heavy infantry spam with, people who can really play the game well in my local area. However, I have seen the the shift in the meta competitively, and I think eventually it'll trickle down to my local game store as well. But we'll just have to see. So for now, I like the Autarch wayleaper with this setup right here with the Strategic Savant, Starglaive, and Dragon Fusion guns worked really well for me. Also, I mean, free Overwatch is always nice in an army that usually doesn't have many command points like Aspect Host. Next up, we have our Battleline units. 2 units of Corsair Void Reavers. Honestly, I found them to be extremely effective overall at dealing with a number of different scenarios. They're really good at screening and move blocking in the early game. So if your opponent is a Tyranid player who has like a lot of Gene Stealers or something like that, these guys are something that can, you can throw onto an objective, you can score a secondary, and then bait something more expensive out into the open. They're also a really good unit for just taking out small little tiny scoring units, like if your opponent has something like, a squad of 10 gaunts on an objective, or, your opponent has a squad of 5 scouts. Corsair Void Reavers actually do pretty well against those units for their points, and they're pretty cheap. You got a blaster in there. Usually, weirdly, the blaster doesn't do anything, but it's nice to have. And they have grenades. So if your opponent has like a lone op that they want to put out there, you could just scout these guys up. I've had opponents who are bold enough to put their, lone ops on the line. And Corsairs can, scout up 7, move 9, and then throw a grenade, right? And that's always a great feeling when you can do that and just kill a lone op right off the bat. So I have 2 units of those. Storm Guardians to defend the backfield. And again, honestly, Storm Guardians are kind of just there to hold the backfield objective. And that's it. They usually move up if my opponent doesn't have any deep strikers. They kind of move up to support things. They're 100 points. They have sticky objectives, which is really nice, especially against NIDs. Like, sticky objectives are like really, really important. Shadows in the Warp will almost every single time produce a situation where you fail a battle shock test. I know it seems like it wouldn't happen, but for some reason, every time something's not sticky, I usually end up failing at least 1 battle shock. So I've been in the habit of like putting 2 units on an objective, maybe trailing some Swooping Hawks out with a rapid ingress to make sure that I can hold it, or just sticking the objective with Storm Guardians usually works really well. I've been playing against a lot of NIDs lately, and I've come to a greater appreciation of sticky objectives from facing NIDs so much. So yeah, the Storm Guardians are good. I really like them. They're still one of my favorite utility units in the list. Next up for infantry, we have 3 units of Dark Reapers. Now, a lot of people will look at 3 squads of 5 and kind of think it's a little overkill with the Dark Reapers. And in most cases, I would agree, except that on the terrain that I play on, the best that I can hope for, right, is like GW terrain layouts at my local store. Usually when I play with my buddies, they're not dedicated enough to make sure all the terrain is, tournament, terrain and stuff like that. They're not really worried about that. We just kind of put a lot of terrain on the table and call it a day. Some games are, every game's different basically, right? We try to make it even and fair, but usually what ends up happening is Dark Reapers are a really good unit in this type of game. Even on GW layouts, by the way, triple Dark Reapers is really good because you can have 10 of them down 2 firing lanes potentially from turn 1 all the way across the board. So you can hit a target from all the way across the board on turn 1 with Dark Reapers from one end to the other, and running them in 3 squads of 5 just makes sense, and I've had success with it. Also, having the 3 squads of Dark Reapers, yes, their main way to do damage is with their single shots for 3 damage apiece to, like, light vehicles and stuff. But their Star Swarm missiles are actually not that bad against hordes. I've actually found that these guys are good at clearing out gaunt waves, right? Because of their long range, gaunts like to, kind of be strung out so that you can get the protection of things like venom thropes and zone thropes for 6-up invul saves and cover and all that. Dark Reapers don't care about cover, they don't care about hit modifiers, so they do really well at killing those types of units. And yeah, I found 3 of them to be very effective. I think if there was a change to be made, if I started playing in, WTC terrain layouts or, UKTC, I would just swap a Dark Reaper squad for Malgan Raw. And I would run 1 squad with Malgan Raw. I'd probably put it in a Falcon. Now, there is no Falcon in this list. That's the other thing. So, the reason there's no Falcon is because I find it difficult in some games to even hide my Wave Serpent effectively. So, when you have a situation where you cannot stage a Wave Serpent in the middle of the board safely, even with screens, by the way, you just can't do it. I find that taking 2 vehicles actually becomes a liability. So I have not taken a Falcon, and that's why I don't take Malgan Raw either, because I just figure there's no point, right? If turn 1, one of my vehicles is going to die if I take more than 1 vehicle, there's just no point in taking it. So instead I've opted for the, more MSU style here. We got the classic 10 Fire Dragons. They are going to be in a Wave Serpent. These guys are just a powerhouse. They almost never fail me. I think I played a game once where my opponent set up the terrain and there was no place to hide my Wave Serpent. I didn't even notice it. It was funny because super casual game, cool guy. He set up the terrain beforehand, so like I didn't have to do any work. So I was just able to be lazy about it. And I'm deploying my stuff and I'm like, hey man, is there any place that I can hide my Wave Serpent? And he's like looking around. He's like, oh, I don't know. I don't think so. So we ended up going with it. And of course, the Wave Serpent died turn 1. And that was funny. And that was a struggle. That was an uphill game. And after that, through talking with him, I was like, yeah, we definitely need to make sure there's at least one place to hide something important turn 1, right? And all my other games have been fine since then. But Fire Dragons are a powerhouse. They have never failed me. They usually take out more than their points worth because, my meta is just saturated with huge monsters and vehicles. I think, even the guy that's running a Horde list, the Tyrannid guy, is running 5 big monsters. He's running 3 Tyrannifexes, a Turvagon, and a Norn Emissary in his list, and a bunch of like little stuff after that, a bunch of support stuff. But that's massive, right? So you need those 5 Fire Dragons in the list to like consistently take those things out, or at least prevent your opponent from advancing on you and just overwhelming you. So 10 Fire Dragons. I recently watched a Vic video on Fireside Podcast. He was going over his new list, and I really want to do a review of the list because I think it's a really fantastic list. However, I don't think that list would perform nearly as well on GW terrain. I think it would actually be much better for what he's currently doing, which is, UKTC types of terrains, layouts, and WTC terrain layouts and stuff like that. Because it's just so much more dense. You can afford to bring more vehicles to the tables, It's tough. It's tough with like quote unquote custom terrain or GW terrain without like footprints and stuff. It's a little hard. But anyway, Fire Dragons are in the list. Howling Banshees are in the list, of course, with Jane Czar. We have 1 squad of 5 Rangers. I only own 5 Rangers, so, would I go with more if I had more? Possibly 2 squads, but that's about it. I've never gone with triple Ranger. I've never felt there'd be a need to, but I do feel like if the meta was very like melee heavy, I would definitely spec into another Ranger instead of Corsair. So I'd swap a Corsair for a Ranger. But honestly, Corsairs can be kind of used in the exact same way in a lot of scenarios as Rangers. They're just a little bit less flexible with, because they don't have the reactive move and stuff like that. So we got 5 Rangers in the list. They're pretty simple. I usually just deploy them in the midfield and, near some terrain so that if I roll like at least a 3 or maybe a 4, I can get behind some terrain. They usually die anyway, some because I roll a 1 or a 2 and they just get shot at, right? But I mean, usually what happens is they attract more stuff to come out than my opponent would normally do, and that allows Dark Reapers to come out and just have a field day, right? Like my opponent moves out a squad of intercessors, for example, to shoot the Rangers, and then I have 15 Dark Reapers on the other side of the board, just right, and just shoot them down. We have 3 squads of 5 Swooping Hawks. Again, this is one of those things where seems like, okay, well, this is just kind of spam, but 3 squads of Swooping Hawks. You got 1 squad in reserve for rapid ingress or objective play, and then you got 2 squads on the board for screening and mortal wounds. So what I like to do with these guys is I like to put pressure on my opponent's units with them and use them to, maybe do a couple mortal wounds to a lone operative, or I like to, put them forward and maybe put a couple of mortals on a Norn emissary, or maybe force my opponent to, react differently with their models, move blocking and stuff like that. So they do a really good job. The Exarch's Last Blaster is there instead of the Hawk's Talon. I prefer the Last Blaster. Now the Hawk's Talon is just straight up better against Marines, but because you're able, the way I use these guys is I use them very aggressively. I don't use them passively. They're not a damage dealing unit for me. They do damage, but that's not their primary goal, right? These are more of a scoring type unit. So I like to outscore my opponent, and Swooping Hawks, 3 units of it really gives me that control over the game, even when I'm rolling very badly. And I think that's the key right there. When I'm not getting the rolls I need, or my opponent is just spiking 4-up invul saves all day long and feel no pains, Swooping Hawks allow me to keep in the game. They buy me time, right? And I think that's the most important thing. They buy me time. And with a time buying unit, you don't necessarily want something that doesn't have the assault keyword. So that's why I have the Exarch's Last Blaster. And it's actually won me the game. It's won me Cold Horde secondaries, which have put me ahead in the game. And it's really good against like large squads of chaff because it's AP -1, and you have the benefit of usually a benefit of a token, right? And lethal hits. So it does pretty good. Okay. Lastly, for our infantry, we have 2 squads of Warp Spiders, one with Lycus, one with the Autarch. The Autarch squad is, of course, a Spinneret Rifle and Death Weavers, and Lycus' squad has the Power Array. Both of these units are really good. They're really strong anti-horde. They deal with gaunts very easily. They deal with guardsmen very easily. They kill Space Marines even, honestly. And in a pinch, they can even do some damage against vehicles. I mean, Lycus and her squad can definitely punch up into a vehicle because they have the 5+ lethals. If you really, shoot and then charge the vehicle, they can do a ton of damage to it. They're really good at move blocking. Again, they're really good at scoring objectives that you need to score. They just open up a lot of avenues for you because of the speed. And, most of you guys, I don't have to tell you this, but Warp Spiders are amazing units, right? Because they give you a level of control when they jump out, and you don't lose, like, if you don't lose like all the Warp Spiders, of course, which would be incredibly unlucky. But, if you just take a wound on the Exarch, they give you really good control over that area of the board for 1 turn. Gives your opponent a lot to think about, which is very underrated for a lot of newer players playing the game. They're like, oh, well, I just want to kill something. Well, sometimes you don't have to kill the entire, whatever's in that area. Sometimes you don't have to, right? Sometimes making your opponent choose between taking an Overwatch to the face and not moving a unit can win you a game right then and there. So 2 squads of 5 warp spiders, really powerful. We have the mounted selection, which is 3 shining spears. Now, I've been running shining spears for a couple of months on and off. I've run them in Tabletop Simulator several times. I finally got the shining spears in. It took forever, but I finally got them. And shining spears are one of those really swingy hit or miss units for me personally. And I think one of the main reasons is because of the matchups that I've been in with them in real life and on tabletop. When I play against Space Marines, they usually do pretty well. When I play into anything that has an invul save that I charge into, they usually fail. And it's just a numbers game, I think. 3 shining spears should do probably about 3 kills. Like, they should kill their points worth into Blade Guard veterans. They should kill their points worth into zone thropes. They should kill their points worth in these targets. But they usually just don't. I don't know what it is about it. My opponent rolls hot, and it's like they don't end up doing anything. But I will say this. They are a good unit. They are solid. It's just that I think circumstantially sometimes they don't seem that great because the types of units that they like to go after, 3 wound targets, usually also have an invul save built in, so it's very swingy. But they can do good, right? And they're really good at busting transports open. Like, oh my gosh, rhinos, devilfish, they just absolutely slaughter those things. So I really do like them for those kind of matchups as well. And, having a mounted unit in your army is good because anti-infantry weapons don't affect them. So if your opponent has like a anti-infantry 2+ weapon with like strength 2 or strength 3, these guys are actually a really good counter to that because they're going to be wounded on 6s or 5s and they're actually decently tough against those types of weapons. So that is awesome as well. And lastly, we have the Wave Serpent. So that's going to carry the Fire Dragons. Pretty standard. Most of this stuff I still have to paint. I haven't gotten around to painting a lot of this stuff. I'm in such a backlog when it comes to painting. I really need to get certain things done before I start painting these guys again. But I have to say, when I've gone to the shop with this list, I very rarely lose with it, and that's not like a brag or anything. It's just this list is a powerful list considering that a lot of the terrain layouts that I play in are non-tournament, non-competitive terrain layouts. And, if you're in a hobby shop, a local area that, kind of uses like player setup terrain, players get to the board and they kind of set up terrain how they think is fair, stuff like that. This type of army can work still, right? A lot of people are like, oh, well, actually, shout out to somebody who recently made a comment in one of my videos saying, I need help. My friends play at 1250 and I can't, I'm in, but I can't do primary. Things, you can make it work. The Eldar Codex is deep enough and the ability to use battle focus will surprise you sometimes on how effective it can be, right? Like at 1250, an enlist with triple Wraithlord, Avatar of Cain perhaps, could be really strong. I mean, it's obviously very slanted towards monsters, and some people might think that's a little cheesy, but if you're playing with no secondaries and that's all your friends play is like primary game, then like I don't see a problem with you running the Avatar and 3 Wraithlords and some warp spiders and like rangers and stuff. I don't see any kind of a problem with that at all. And if you want to run a lot of Wraithguard, you're probably going to struggle a little bit, but you could also do some good work with those. Wraith blades with swords are good. It's just that, Iyanden as a detachment isn't really super competitive. You really do need the Wraithlords and maybe even the Avatar. Like, you need a strong monster presence, I feel, in an Iyanden list. And you still need Aspect Warriors in an Iyanden list to make it kind of operate smoothly. But, in your local gaming stores, you can the Eldar can adapt very well, right? They can adapt very well regardless of what the meta is. There's a lot of knight players in my meta, and it's funny, there's this knight player who can never get a game, ever. And, I'm always there playing someone else, but like I always see him kind of wandering sadly around with his like box of knights. It's so sad, guys. Because he just carries his box of knights. Like he doesn't have them in like an actual box or anything. Like he doesn't have them in a carrying case, right? He just has them in like one of the boxes that they come in. And he's just carrying them around the store, man. And like nobody wants to play against his knights. Like I don't know. I've heard some rumors about the guy that he's not so great to play against, but I think it's just a little sad. And I always think like, oh, maybe I'll play him one day. And then I'm like, yeah, but what if this army just, I mean, this army's really good against knights. So it's like, man, like he finally gets a game and then he just gets countered hard. Like I don't want that to happen either. So yeah, there's a lot of those types of players though that just have like a lot of monsters, a lot of vehicles, stuff like that. And this list has done very well against a lot of them. And I think it just is a list that runs smooth, it performs well. I've not really had any issues with it. It gives me a lot of options at like all points in the game. And every single time that I've scored less points than I should have, it was because it was my fault. I should have made a better decision. There was only really one game that I ever had that wasn't in my control, that the one that I couldn't hide my wave serpent anywhere, and then like it just died turn one. That is the only game I've had with this list that was like, oh shit, like this was fucked from the beginning, right? Like a lot of players will have lists they'll put on the board and they'll just start playing it and realize, oh, I have no answers to this. I have no answers to that, and they'll start playing through it and like they'll have to redesign their list. I really haven't found any army yet that I haven't been able to answer. I've played against Space Wolves. I've played against, Blood Angels with this list. I've played so many different types of armies. Haven't played Gene Stealer Cult, but honestly, it's not a matchup I really like to jump into anyway because they're Gene Stealer Cult. I mean, they're kind of like, I mean, they're not like, I don't think they're like as good as everybody says, especially after the latest nerfs. But I do think they're like one of those like anti-Eldar kind of builds that like you really have to like play a sweaty game to win against them. And I'm just like not always for that. But most of the games, most of the matchups are really good, honestly, with this list. And this is kind of the culmination of it, honestly. This is what it is. If you guys want to make some changes to it, some personal changes, here's what I would recommend. Like if you play on like really heavy terrain layouts like WTC or UKTC, I think this style of list can very easily be adapted to those terrain layouts. Like for example, all these Dark Reapers, right? On heavier terrain layouts, you're not going to be getting as many lines of sight across the board. So using 3 squads of 5 Dark Reapers isn't as efficient as using 5 Dark Reapers with Malgan Raw and a Falcon, right? So in those layouts, you can easily switch these, change a couple things up, like drop a, gosh, what is it? You can drop a Swooping Hawk, right? Drop a Swooping Hawk or drop a Shining Spear. All those Shining Spears are good. You can drop a Shining Spear. You can drop a couple squads of Warp Spiders, put in a Falcon, put in Malgan Raw, and you can have what you need, right? If you are going against a more melee-oriented meta, okay, well, Dark Reapers, on a melee-oriented meta with really heavy terrain, they're just not good, right? Like you can afford, again, you can do the Malgan Raw thing, but a better move would probably be to, take out a squad of Dark Reapers, put in a squad of Howling Banshees, right? Put in a second squad of Howling Banshees instead. And again, we have the points for that, right? Because we're at 1990, so we have a little bit of room to work with here. So you can easily swap out a squad of Dark Reapers for Howling Banshees. Shoot, swap out 2 squads of Dark Reapers for Howling Banshees, right? And you could even swap out the Shining Spears for Malgan Raw and the 3rd Dark Reaper, and maybe you'd have to swap a few things more out for the Falcon, but I'd say honestly a Corsair and the Shining Spears that we talked about earlier, you can swap out for the Falcon and do that. Or a Swooping Hawk, right? You can swap out 1 Swooping Hawk for him. So there's a lot of little changes you can do to this archetype. And that's why I've really enjoyed Aspect Host playing it, because I feel like if the meta changes, I can adapt, right? This is a very simple Eldar list to like. It's complicated in the ways that Eldar are complicated, but once you understand the Eldar, it's very easy. The game plan with this army is largely the same when you look at it from, the list building perspective. So, like, it's adaptable is what I'm trying to say, right? It's very adaptable to the meta. Whereas Iandon, right, the Spirit Conclave is not adaptable. It's not adaptable at all, right? Because you have a very few types of units you can select from. Aspect warriors are very fluid, they're specialized, so they're easier to, swap around as needed. And Seer Council is another one. Seer Council is a little bit more adaptable because you're going to have the same core of units, but you also have aspect warriors, right? Harlequins is another example. Harlequins are not that adaptable. There's if the meta goes in a certain way, Harlequins can be in real trouble, right? And Harlequins aren't doing super well anyway because they're just limited in their options. Ynnari is honestly, I feel like if the meta goes more melee heavy, Ynnari might be a consideration again. I know a lot of people don't think that, but in heavy terrain layouts, I still think Yvrain and Incubi are decent. Although, gosh, I think they're too expensive still, and I don't know if they're the most competitive. But, fights first with, Incubi, Yvrain, and all that can still do really good work against things that are charging in. Black Templars are really, difficult to fight against, honestly. I played a quick 2v2 game the other day with my buddy. He was playing Eldar, and I was playing Eldar against Black Templars and Sisters. And the Sisters guy just got kind of sweeped, although I was surprised by the Hospitaller and Sacrosanct, combo unit, which is honestly just took me completely unaware. But the thing they have like a 4+ invul and a 5+ feel no pain, and they can like resurrect models. So when I charged into that squad, I had no idea what I was in for. But yeah, you think like, oh, an Autarch and 5 Banshees can kill 5 Sacrosancts and this character, but then you're like, oh wait, no, they can't, right? So Black Templars are really good. Helbricht is really insane, like he's hard to get around, but the advantage to playing against Black Templars is knowing their stratagems, right? Because if there's a lot of things we can do to get around some of their strats. They have a movement phase strat where they can move. If you end a move within 9, they can move D6 and they can move into engagement. But it doesn't count as a charge. So your Howling Banshees, if they move into engagement with you, they don't count as charging. I know it may seem weird for, Black Templar players. They're like, oh, what do you mean it doesn't count as a charge? It doesn't count as a charge. You're just moving within engagement. That's what it is. If it was counted as a charge, they would say it in the actual thing, right? They would say, make a charge move, or this counts as a charge move. So you can work around that, right? You have a fights first unit they can deal with it. It's fine. Or you just stay outside of, like, you're at like 7.1. So another way to deal with that is you're just at 7.1, man. And then that way, even if they roll a 6, you're not going to be within engagement. You can still throw a swooping hawk grenade at them. If they want to move towards you, great. You could just shoot them more, right? They could just move back, but, you don't have to worry about it with your combat units, typically, which is nice. So, yeah. Again, this army is very adaptable. It's very solid, I think, in most matchups. But you can also make a lot of changes based on terrain or meta and stuff like that. So that's where I am with this army. I just wanted to kind of talk to you guys about it, show you guys the list that I've been running over the past whatever, honestly, probably about 4 or 5 months now, if not longer. I've kind of lost track of time a little bit. But I plan, once I get this stuff painted up, I plan to bring it to a couple of tournaments because I've had some great success with it on boards that it shouldn't be good in. So I'm thinking like, okay, if I can bring it to a game where we're just placing terrain and like there's not optimal staging areas for all my units, and this list is performing well in those situations, it can probably perform pretty well on GW layouts as well. I've had success with it on Tabletop Simulator, and I think it's honestly it's finally all built. By the way, I don't have to proxy anything. The only thing I'm waiting for actually is Lycus. That's the only thing I'm waiting for currently. But that's about it. Everything else I have built up. I recently painted the Dark Reapers too, just because they're really quick. You just spray paint them black and dry brush them. Did it at the same time I was painting something else for a buddy of mine. But yeah, I mean these are good to go. So, by the way, not now, but soon. If anybody's in the Southern California area, I'm gonna have a little a possible meetup kind of thing where we play some games. I have a few buddies that I usually play with. You guys can meet those friends perhaps, and something like that. If you're interested, let me know. I'm in the Southern California area. I'm not opposed to playing anybody who, or helping somebody who plays Eldar, meeting some fellow Eldar players around here, because I'm like the only guy who plays. I'm like one of two people who plays Eldar, and I'm the only guy who plays Eldar seriously. Like, I'm the only Eldar main in the area that I know of. So, anyway. Alright, guys, that's going to be it for today's video. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you guys think. Usually I would do a TTS follow-up on this list, but honestly, if you guys want to see that, I'll do it. I just feel like some of the, especially with this list, I feel like I've already done it so many times. So let me know, though. I can create a follow-up video, or I can do other list videos and stuff. Let me know what you guys want to see, and I'll do it for you. Alrighty, guys, that's going to be it for today's video. Thank you to all my patrons and supporters for supporting the channel over the last 3 years. You've been a great help and have really helped the channel grow and succeed, so thank you. If you do want to support the channel, join the Patreon. I have free trials activated, which will grant you permanent access to our Discord community, my personal Discord community for the Aeldari, Giga Chads out there that are just just awesome. By the way, we have one of the best Eldar communities I think out there. So, we're really helpful. We're chill. There's not a lot of BS going around in the Discord. You know what I mean? Like, we're all pretty cool. So, come on, join us for free. Or, if you want to support the channel, that'd be awesome as well. And lastly, I have a Eldar Fandex project in the works. And I hate to say it, but the cutoff for the custom Eldar Knights has passed. So if you want to grab a physical copy of it, though, with all the artwork and stuff like that, that is being designed and created as we speak. There's going to be an update soon on the Fandex. It's very close to being put together. So, if you guys backed that, thank you so much. It's been a blast making the rules for it and play testing all the stuff. It's been really fun. And I think it's going to be an awesome Fandex for those of you who are, kind of into that and into the more casual narrative side of 40K. So yeah, that's going to be fun. If you want to check that out, there's a link in the description. Lastly, I do have an Amazon affiliate link and a channel store page where I, sell discounted Eldar minis and Eldar inspired apparel. So yeah, check that out. And that's it. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one, everybody. Peace out.